There's a silence that exists only within the heart of a storm. It's the brief, breathless pause between the lightning flash and the thunderclap. A moment filled with a strange electric potential. It's in that silence that the mind begins to play tricks. Or perhaps it's in that silence that we finally become able to hear the things that are always there, just beneath the surface of our reality, waiting for the veil to thin. A storm doesn't just bring rain and wind, it brings isolation. It cuts you off from the world, reduces your existence to a few dimly lit rooms, and forces you to confront the sounds of your own home and the terrifying possibility that you might be sharing that space with something else. The stories I will tell you tonight are not for the faint of heart. They are accounts from those who have stared into the storm-swept darkness and seen something staring back. They are a testament to the fact that when the heavens tear open, sometimes things fall through, or worse, things climb out. Story 1. The Knocking on the Roof. My name is Daniel. To find peace, I bought an A-frame cabin deep in the Adirondack Mountains. It was a place of rugged beauty by day, but by night, especially a stormy night, it was a different world entirely. The event I'm about to describe occurred during the tail end of hurricane season, when a remnant storm, angrier than expected, decided to vent its fury upon my little slice of solitude. It began subtly, a distant grumble, a freshening of the wind that set the pine trees sighing. Within an hour, the sigh had become a roar. The sky turned a bruised, sickly green, and the rain arrived not in drops but in solid, horizontal sheets of water. The power died with a pathetic flicker, leaving me in a cave of candlelight, the flames dancing frantic shadows on the wooden walls. The world outside was a cacophony of screaming wind, pounding rain, and the violent crack of nearby trees succumbing to the gale. And then, beneath it all, I heard a new sound. A heavy... It was coming from the steep triangular roof directly over my head. My first rational thought was of a large branch, torn loose and being rolled by the wind. But this was different. This had a cadence. It was the sound of movement, of something with weight, with intention, pacing the apex of my roof. I sat frozen in my armchair, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. I tried to dismiss it. It's the storm, just the storm. But the primal part of my brain, the part that remembers what it's like to be prey, was screaming. The sound moved from the center of the roof towards the eaves directly above my bedroom, and then it stopped. The silence was somehow worse. For a full minute, there was only the rage of the storm. I dared to breathe. And then it started again, but not on the roof. This time, it was on the large picture window to my right. Not the random patter of rain. This was deliberate. The sound of a single hard object striking the glass with purpose. I slowly, so slowly, turned my head. The window was a black mirror, reflecting the terrified man in the candle-lit room. I could see nothing beyond. The tapping began to move. It traced the square outline of the window pane, a slow, methodical exploration of the perimeter. My breath hitched. This wasn't a branch. Branches don't trace windows. The fear was a physical thing now, a cold lead weight in my chest. I couldn't move, couldn't call for help. I was utterly, completely alone with it. Then came the lightning. Not a distant flash, but a simultaneous blast of white-hot light and an earth-shattering crack that felt like it split the sky in two. The world was bleached, frozen in a snapshot of terrifying clarity. And in that snapshot, pressed against the glass, was a face. It was hairless, its skin a slick, grayish clay, streaked with what looked like dark mud. Its head was elongated, tapering to a pointed chin. It had no nose, just two vertical slits. But its eyes, they were vast, pools of absolute blackness, like the voids between stars. And it was smiling. A wide, lipless gash of a smile that stretched far too wide, filled with small, sharp, needle-like teeth. The image lasted only a fraction of a second before darkness swallowed it again. The tapping resumed, faster now, more frantic. It was no longer an exploration, it was an attempt to break through. I squeezed my eyes shut, my hands clamped over my ears, rocking back and forth, a low whimper escaping my lips. I don't know how long I stayed like that. I must have eventually lost consciousness, overwhelmed by sheer terror. I woke to sunlight. The storm was gone. The world was quiet, washed clean. Birds were singing. It felt like a dream, a feverish nightmare. I stumbled to the window, expecting to see nothing. And there was nothing. No scratches, no marks. Shaken but relieved, I tried to piece my sanity back together. It was hours later, when I went to rebuild the fire, that the final piece of the nightmare clicked into place. I reached for the iron poker leaning against the hearth. My fingers closed around the handle, and they came away sticky and cold. I looked down. The entire metal end of the poker was coated in a thick, dark, foul-smelling mud. The same mud I had seen streaked across that thing's face in the blinding flash of lightning. It hadn't just been outside. While I was passed out in that chair, paralyzed with fear, it had been in here. It had stood in my living room, picked up my fireplace poker, examined it, and then left it for me to find. A message, a receipt of its visit. I sold the cabin a month later. I never spent another night there. Story 2. The Wrong Channel. My name is Frank. Life on the road is a solitary one, and you learn to find comfort in the familiar. The hum of the engine, the white lines on the asphalt, and the crackle of the CB radio. It was a night of biblical rain, somewhere in the flat, endless expanse of Kansas. The sky was a deep, angry purple, and lightning was striking so frequently it was like a disco from hell. It was too dangerous to drive. I pulled my 18-wheeler into a deserted rest stop, a lonely island of concrete in a sea of drowning cornfields. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was filled only by the drumming of rain on the roof, a sound so loud it was almost physical. To fight the isolation, I flicked on my CB radio. Most channels were a mess of storm static, a sound like frying bacon. But then, I tuned into a channel that was crystal clear. A man's voice, calm but edged with tension, was speaking. "Just heard the weather service. It's a confirmed tornado warning. We're in the basement. It's okay, Sarah. It's gonna be okay. The lights just flickered. The generator should kick in if it goes out. Just hold my hand." This wasn't trucker chatter. This was a private conversation. I was eavesdropping on someone's worst nightmare. I felt a pang of guilt, but also a strange, voyeuristic connection. They were so close, probably in one of the farmhouses I'd passed. I keyed the mic, my voice gruff. "Hey there, friend. Trucker here. Pulled over at the rest stop. Sounds like you're in the thick of it. Just hang tight. Basement's the right place to be." There was a long pause. The static hissed. Then the man's voice returned, confused. "Sarah, did you hear that?" Sounded like a voice. Came from the baby monitor. Must be interference from the storm. My blood ran cold. A baby monitor. I wasn't on a CB channel. I was picking up a wireless signal from their home. This was a profound violation of their privacy. I was about to switch it off when the man's voice sharpened, fear cutting through his forced calm. "What was that? That wasn't thunder. That was a knock on the cellar door. Sarah, did you lock the bulkhead?" "I know I did." I leaned forward, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could hear it now, faint but unmistakable through the speaker. A low, heavy, resonant thud. It wasn't the random banging of a loose shutter. It was deliberate, powerful. "It's happening again," the man whispered, his voice trembling. "It's not the wind. The wind doesn't sound like that. It sounds like someone hitting the door with a sledgehammer." The thudding intensified. It became a rapid, violent barrage. I heard the man yell, "Stay behind me," and the metallic screech of what sounded like a heavy shelf being dragged across a concrete floor. Then came the sound of splintering wood, a horrific final crack. And then a new sound flooded the speaker. It wasn't a growl, not really. It was a low, guttural, wet vibration, like a massive engine trying to turn over in a pool of mud and gravel. It was a sound of pure, mindless hunger. The man's scream was short, sharp, and ended with a sickening, wet crunch that I will hear for the rest of my life. Then, silence. A dead, empty silence, devoid of even the hiss of static. I sat in the dark cab, the rain still pounding, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't even grip the steering wheel. I spent the rest of the night there, too terrified to move, too horrified to sleep. At first light, I pulled back onto the highway. A few miles down the road, I saw it. A small, white farmhouse set back from the road. The storm had torn shingles off the roof, but that wasn't what held my gaze. The cellar bulkhead doors were shattered, splintered inward from the outside. A police car was parked haphazardly in the driveway. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I read the news reports online later. A double homicide. No signs of forced entry on the main floors. The scene was described as unlike anything the seasoned coroner had ever witnessed. No suspects, no motive. I took my truck into the shop the next week and had them permanently remove the CB radio. I couldn't stand the sound of static anymore. Story 3. The Lightning Tree. Childhood memories are supposed to be golden, tinged with nostalgia. Mine are shadowed by the old oak tree that stood sentinel in our backyard. It was a magnificent, ancient thing, its branches a sprawling canopy for our games. But that all changed one summer night when a storm of biblical proportions rolled in. The lightning strike was a physical blow, a simultaneous flash and a deafening crack that shook the foundations of our house. The smell of ozone was overwhelming. In the morning, we saw the damage. The great oak was cloven in two, a deep blackened scar running down its center, smoke still rising from its heartwood. It felt like witnessing the murder of an old friend. But then, the so-called miracle began. Within weeks, despite the charred and seemingly dead wood, vibrant green shoots erupted from the split. My parents saw it as a symbol of resilience. I saw it as something else, something unnatural. The dream started soon after. I'd find myself at my bedroom window, drawn by an unseen force, looking out at the tree. In the dream, the split in the trunk pulsed with a faint, malevolent red light, like a slow, sleeping heart, and the tree communicated with me. Not in words, but in waves of emotion that washed over me. A deep, ancient, and profound anger. A resentment for the wound it had suffered. A cold hatred for the life that continued around it. The waking world began to reflect the nightmares. Our family dog, a brave and stupidly loyal Labrador named Sam, would not set foot in the backyard. He would stand at the threshold, whining, his tail between his legs, the fur on his spine bristling. The vibrant flower bed at the base of the tree withered and died within days, the soil turning hard and barren despite my mother's constant care. And there was the cold, a permanent, localized winter that clung to the tree. On a 90-degree day, you could stand 10 feet from its trunk and feel a chill that went straight to your bones. The final proof, the thing that convinced my skeptical father, was the photograph. I had gotten a new Polaroid camera for my birthday. I decided to take a picture of the tree, this strange, beautiful, and terrifying new version of it. The camera whirred and spat out the blank film. I watched, as I always did, as the image slowly developed, and my blood ran cold. There, in the deep split of the trunk, nestled among the supposedly miraculous new growth, the film had captured something our eyes could not see. It wasn't a red light, it was a face. A horrifically contorted face, formed from the gnarled bark and the deep shadows. Its mouth was a gaping, silent scream, and its eyes were hollow pits of darkness. The new growth surrounding it didn't look like leaves and shoots. In the photo, they looked like thin, grasping fingers, like thorny tendrils clawing their way out of a prison of wood and charcoal. I ran inside, the photograph feeling like a live coal in my hand. I showed my parents. The color drained from my father's face. My mother made the sign of the cross. The debate was over. We called a tree service the next morning. The men who arrived were burly, practical men who smelled of gasoline and sawdust. Their confidence evaporated the moment they approached the tree. The foreman, a man named Hank, with forearms like hams, looked up at the split trunk and paled. "I've been doing this for 30 years, he said quietly. "I've never felt anything like that. This tree, it feels hateful." As his crew started their chainsaws, the engines would sputter and die the moment the blades touched the blackened heartwood. They'd restart them, and the same thing would happen. When they finally managed to make a cut, the tree didn't bleed sap. It oozed a thick, black, tarry substance that smelled of ozone, rot, and something metallic like old blood. The smell was so foul it made one of the men vomit. When the great trunk finally fell with a ground-shaking crash, they all gathered around the stump. The core was hollow, and inside that hollow, packed tightly together, were bones. Small, clean, polished bones. Squirrels, rabbits, birds, and even a few neighborhood cats that had gone missing. They weren't scattered. They were arranged, neatly, deliberately. We had the stump ground to dust, and the hole filled with salt and fresh soil from another part of the county. Nothing has ever grown there since. The cold spot remains, and I keep that Polaroid in a locked box. It's a reminder that the world is not as we know it, that sometimes lightning doesn't just destroy, it can act as a defibrillator, jolting something ancient and malevolent back to a terrible, hungry life. Story 4. The Static Man. In our modern world, our fears have evolved. We're no longer just afraid of the dark. We're afraid of what can hide in the light of our own screens. This is the story of Amelia, a software engineer who lived on the 22nd floor of a sleek downtown apartment building. Her life was one of order and logic, of code and clear outcomes, until the night the storm broke that logic. It wasn't just a storm, it was an electrical siege. Lightning walked the skyline, striking skyscrapers with impunity. During one particularly close strike, a blinding blue-white fork that hit a transformer on a pole directly opposite her building, the world went mad. The power didn't just fail, it surged with a vicious audible pop. Every single LED light bulb in her apartment exploded in a shower of plastic and silicon. Her large, flat-screen television, which had been on mute, didn't just go black. The screen fizzed to life with a frantic, hissing static, casting a frantic gray strobe across the dark room. Amelia's heart was in her throat. She stood up, her ears ringing from the thunderclap, and fumbled for her phone to use as a flashlight. As she passed the TV, a flicker of movement within the chaos of the static caught her eye. She stopped, staring. The shifting patterns of gray and black snow weren't random. They were coalescing, organizing, forming a shape, a humanoid silhouette. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs elongated and distorted, and it was standing right in the center of the 65-inch screen, facing her. She blinked, shook her head. Afterimage, she told herself. Power surge. Glitch. But the figure remained. And as she watched, frozen in disbelief, it slowly raised one long, spindly arm and extended a single, pointed finger directly at her. A tremendous peal of thunder shook the floor-to-ceiling windows. The figure in the static glitched, pixelated, and for a blessed second vanished. Amelia let out a shuddering breath. See? A glitch. Then, a soft electronic hiss emanated from her kitchen counter. She turned, her movements jerky with panic. The digital baby monitor, which she used to listen for her cat, had lit up. Its small 3-inch screen was no longer showing a peaceful, sleeping kitten. It was filled with the same frantic, hissing static, and in the center of that tiny screen was the same tall, thin figure. And it was still pointing. A cold, suffocating terror gripped her. This wasn't a glitch. This was coordinated. She backed away from the kitchen, her eyes darting around the dark apartment. Her smartphone, charging on her coffee table, suddenly lit up without being touched. The screen was a mess of colorful digital corruption. And there it was again. The Static Man, smaller now, but unmistakable, pointing from the device that was an extension of her own hand. It was in every screen. It was using the electrical storm, using the very wiring of her modern life to hunt her, to trap her. Her apartment, her sanctuary, had become a high-tech haunted house. With a choked cry, she ran into her bedroom, slamming the door and jamming a chair under the knob. She dove under the duvet, pulling it over her head, trying to block out the relentless, hissing static that now seemed to be emanating from the very walls. She buried her head in the pillows, praying for dawn, for the storm to end, for the nightmare to be over. The next morning, the sun was shining. The power was back on. Cautiously, she emerged. The TV was off. The baby monitor showed a peaceful, empty living room. Her phone was back to its normal home screen. She spent the day trying to rationalize it, a shared hallucination triggered by the electromagnetic pulse. Mass hysteria. She almost convinced herself. It was a week later, while clearing out her phone's camera roll to free up space, that she found it. A single photo, time-stamped from the very peak of the storm's fury. It was a selfie. She had no memory of taking it. In the photo, her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror, illuminated by the camera's flash. She was huddled on her bed, the duvet pulled up to her chin. But it was the background that stopped her heart. Reflected in the dark, rain-streaked glass of her bedroom window, clear as day, was the tall, thin silhouette of the Static Man. It was standing behind her, inside her locked bedroom, its elongated arm outstretched, its finger pointing directly at the back of her head. It had never been in the screens. The screens were just its windows. The storm had given it a door, and it had been standing right behind her all along, sharing her hiding place, its static-filled presence a silent digital predator in the heart of the analog dark. She moved out that very day, leaving most of her electronics behind. She now lives in a house in the country with a landline and a profound, lifelong fear of the sound of static and the smell of ozone before a storm. 4 stories. 4 moments where the natural and the supernatural collided with terrifying consequences. A thing on the roof, a voice from a doomed house, a tree with a vengeful spirit, and a digital phantom. They all share a common thread. The storm was not the monster, but the catalyst. It was the key that turned in the lock, the blanket that smothered the noise of the civilized world, allowing us to hear the things that were always there, waiting. So, the next time the barometer drops and the sky turns the color of a bruise, pay attention. Unplug your devices, draw your curtains, and as you listen to the rain lash your windows, ask yourself a simple question. Are you waiting for the storm to pass? Or are you waiting to see what the storm has brought with it? The line between our world and what lies beyond is thinner than you think. And it's during a storm that it stretches to its breaking point.